Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sangham namasami. Good evening, dear friends. We are continuing to have our Death Awareness Month here with Dhamma Dharini. I'm welcome all of you who are dedicated to join and participate in this month of practice. I particularly want to give a shout out to Grace, who is right there on my screen. Sorry. Grace has joined us for a few weeks as a visitor at our monastery. And I see May, Maureen, Richard, Tangerine, Sheila with us now, and Venerable Dhammavara and Seminary Satima with us here in the room. I had started doing some slow meditations, which were basically contemplation of phrases of the Dhamma. And to set up the meditation that I have in mind for tonight, I need to read you the sutta first, and let that context sink into you. Otherwise, the meditation I'll give you might seem to be too shocking. Once again, I have to explain that I'm suffering from bronchitis these days. I did finally get a prescription from my doctor today, so maybe the next time I see you, I won't be coughing so much. Okay, here's the sutta. This is in the Pedavatu, which is sort of a late, a little bit later than the 4 books of the suttas, but it's still part of the Pali Canon. The beloved son of a family died, but none of the family members cried at his death. The son was reborn as the god Saka, and then came to the family disguised as an old man and asked them why they didn't cry. The father, just as a serpent sheds its old skin and abandons it, humans also abandon their useless body and die. That burning dead body is unaware of the crying of its relatives. Therefore, I do not cry over my dead son. He went on to another life according to his karma. The mother said, he came into the world without invitation and departed without permission. He was born in this world and went from this world according to his own karma. What is the use of crying? That burning dead body is unaware of the crying of its relatives. Therefore, I do not cry over my dead son. He went on to another life according to his karma. The sister said, if I would cry, I would become very exhausted. What would I gain from crying? My crying would only bring more sadness to our relatives, friends, and family. That burning dead body is unaware of the crying of its relatives. Therefore, I do not cry over my dead brother. He went to another life according to his karma. And the wife said, just as a child cries, asking for the moon, it is the same as someone crying over another's death. That burning dead body is unaware of the crying of its relatives. Therefore, I do not cry over my dead husband. He went to another life according to his karma. And the servant said, just as a shattered pot cannot be fixed, it is the same as someone crying over another's death. That burning dead body is unaware of the crying of its relatives. Therefore, I do not cry over my dead master. He went to another life according to his karma. Just the other day on Sunday, I was speaking to another group about the same death awareness, and recalling how so often the loss of a loved one, if part of our identity is tied up in our relationship to them, then the death can be experienced as being a trauma, something that's very painful, like a wound, and that then grief comes along. And one of the participants in the group said, "Well, my best friend passed away this past year, and I was aware of not feeling that kind of disturbance. I was aware of some sadness, but I didn't have any strong emotional grief. I just was so grateful to have had such a wonderful friendship with my friend over the long period of time, and to be able to be with her and supporting her at the time of her death." So likewise, it's not necessarily true that when one's relative or one's dear one passes away, that one would fall into that traumatic kind of grief. It may depend in part on how resolved or complete that person is in their own passing, and how resolved and complete you are in your relationship to them. So if there's not any remorse or guilt or worry in a relationship to that person, and if that person is having a mindful death, then it could be possible that this contemplation, these are different metaphors really for the contemplation of equanimity, that realizing that beings pass on according to their karma is a phrase that's used to bring ourselves into a state of being equanimous no matter what's happening. So having given that much of an introduction, let's sit for meditation. I welcome all of you to come to an upright and balanced posture. aware of the physical body, the sitting posture of the body, feeling the weight of the body, the contact of the seat on the chair and the feet on the ground, or the legs on the cushion, feeling one's connection to the earth. Feeling that gentle energy or the lift of the upright posture, as if the trunk of the body and the head are reaching up towards the sky like a tree. And without letting go of that upright balance, allowing the body to relax, letting the shoulders drop, letting the arms rest, letting the hands rest, letting the belly be soft. Relaxing the face. Scanning the body from head to toe. And if anything is tight or agitated, think of relaxing around that place. If anything in the body is painful or difficult, relax with that. Keeping the whole body in full awareness. There may be different touching sensations that come up that are noticeable. Notice each touch on the body. How that experience arises. And then when awareness shifts, that experience fades. Many moments of experience, touching, arising, passing. If the breath is noticeable, letting the breath be the object of awareness. Not a narrow clinging to the breath, but opening, relaxing, and letting the breath fill up the field of awareness as a tranquil meditation. Knowing how this feels, knowing the state of mind, breathing in and breathing out. And keeping this full awareness, remembering that I too shall die. As the serpent sheds its old skin and abandons it, I shall abandon this body. There's no need for crying. And if the feeling or the state of mind shifts with this contemplation, noticing what that's like. Breathing in, I shall abandon this useless body. Breathing out, no need for crying. Breathing in, seeing the Kamma. Breathing out, seeing the Kamma. Bringing to mind a dear relative who has passed away. Uninvited, they came in the world. Without permission, they departed from the world. They were born and left according to their own karma. Breathing in, knowing my relative was born. Breathing out, knowing my relative has died. Breathing in, understanding karma. Breathing out with calmness. Breathing in, thinking of all the beings who are dying. Crying over their deaths, asking them to not die, is like a child asking for the moon. Breathing in, knowing the many who are dying. Breathing out, aware of karma. Breathing in, understanding their life and death. Breathing out with calmness. And breathing in, bringing to mind any deceased person who harmed me, who hurt me in the past. And now they are deceased, they have died. Breathing in, they are like a shattered pot. Breathing out, they cannot be fixed, cannot come back. Breathing in, aware of karma. Breathing out with calmness. So, dear friends, I know that this practice of calling to mind different persons or different kinds of persons who have passed away and reflecting on their death is not invented by me. I have the memory of the most beautiful meditation along these lines offered by Thich Nhat Hanh, but as much as I've searched for it, I cannot find it. But I know definitely for sure I experienced within his school this kind of meditation, calling to mind one's parents and ancestors, loved ones, neutral persons, and those who have harmed us, and contemplating about the inevitability of death. And bringing peace and happiness into that contemplation. We know that in the Visuddhimagga, when the meditation on the four persons in connection with the loving kindness practice, the practice of metta, the counsel in choosing a dear person to be the object of one's metta meditation, to not think of a dear person who is deceased, which was always a bit of a curiosity to me. I believe that in that case, what's explained in the Visuddhimagga is that it could arouse distress and sorrow, and then be a disturbance to that meditation, or be a kind of an interference to that meditation because of some unresolved feelings that one might have about one's departed loved relatives. It seems quite clear in the context of the brief reading that I gave, how the classical contemplation of equanimity, which is, all beings are born of their karma, related to their karma, supported by their karma, whatever karma they shall do, whether for good or for ill, of that karma they shall be the heir. That this meditation, which is supportive of equanimity, is very much appropriate for the case of those who are deceased, or looking at the arising and passing away of beings, that all beings who are born must die. And it can be a very powerful way to move beyond the sense of distress about death, to have that contemplation. I don't want myself or others to get into too much of a materialistic idea about karma. There's some suttas in the teachings that there's one in particular in the Digha Nikaya, which I find to be, it's a difficult sutta to read or give credit to, because it seems overly specific, and it's saying that a person who is gossips would be reborn as somebody with a bad voice, or somebody who is does some kind of bad deed will be born with a bad complexion in their next life, or somebody who's greedy will be born skinny in their next life, or some very specific idea that what we experience in this life is a predictable penalty for some particular fault in the previous life. However, I do think that everything that happens has a cause. And this can be a calming contemplation to reflect about. I'll give another example. When the tsunami that affected Sri Lanka and Thailand happened, Bhante Ji was on a interreligious panel on the radio about that event. And the question was, how could God allow so many people to be killed in the tsunami? And the different speakers from different faith backgrounds were struggling to answer that question. And then when the interviewer turned to Bhante Gunaratana, he was trying to get Bhante Ji to say that Sri Lanka and Thailand suffered all of these deaths because of karma. And Bhante did not want to give that answer because there had been a certain amount of unwholesome discussions in the social media or among people in Sri Lanka to the effect that a lot of Tamil people who lived near the ocean and had their livelihood in fishing were killed, and a lot of Buddhist people who were farmers and lived in the higher ground were not killed. So the effect of the tsunami especially fell on the Tamil minority in Sri Lanka, and this kind of like a theory or this talk or this gossip was supporting not a wholesome, compassionate state of thinking, but a sort of like a vicious, that's what they deserve, and a sort of a disrespect for those who had died. And so the answer that Bhante gave was that Sri Lanka and Thailand in particular were affected because there were the two tectonic plates under the ocean that had been building up the pressure over many eons, and then at that particular moment the plates slipped, which caused the tsunami, and those countries were adjacent to that particular part of the sea, and that's the reason why those countries had to experience so much disaster and so many deaths. The same way when we have the disasters of war, I can remember persons asking what I thought about how the country of Vietnam would have been affected by such a long war with so many terrible deaths and so much suffering. And like Vietnam is a Buddhist country, what has Vietnam done to deserve so much misery? Or what has Israel and Palestine done to deserve so much misery? And what has Ukraine done to deserve so much misery? And in that sense, in the sense that Bhante Gunaratana was speaking, well, there would be millions of decisions made by millions of individuals over a long period of time, not just during our lifetime, but going back centuries, even more than 1,000 years back in history, that different choices have been made by people that are supporting the particular social reality that is confronting us today, and that's, coming into combination with a whole bunch of other choices that different people have made about technology that gives us a much better technology for killing than we had before, and so then these disasters happening for these reasons, and each individual who dies may be reborn according to their karma. So a person who has a stream entry, a person who lives a life dwelling in the practice of loving kindness, a person who has meditation practice or meditation attainments, a person who loves God and wants to be with God in heaven and lives their whole life following their faith with that intention of wishing to be with God in heaven. All of these people can predictably be reborn in the state according to their karma. And in those cases, you would say, well, those deaths, there's nothing to cry about in those kind of deaths. If a person is overtaken by hatred, overtaken by anger, overtaken by despair, and if they pass away in that state, indeed they could be reborn in a painful place. It's for this reason that when I pray for the, that's a Christian terminology, when I dedicate the merits of my practice for the welfare of the persons around the world today who are still not yet dead, they're still alive, but facing up with these tremendous danger and these tremendous catastrophes. My wish for them is that they would not have their morality be corrupted because of the trauma that they're undergoing. I dedicate my merit for them not to fall into a state of hatred, for them to know how toxic the reactions to disaster can be, and to have the mental health to be able to be resilient and to come back from the difficult experiences they're having without becoming a moral cripple. Another question that people sometimes ask is when they have suffered, individually, they have suffered harm and hurt from another. If someone has been, for example, abused as a child, and during their childhood they didn't have the wisdom to be able to rise above what they were experiencing, so that they really were victims who really took on a psychological injury that then may have taken them a lifetime to overcome. And even then maybe not completely overcome the sorrow and the tears and the residual trauma related to that, and then that person, the perpetrator of those evil deeds, has passed away, and then it seems like there's not any way to come to close the circle of a reconciliation with that person if that reconciliation work was not done while both of you were alive. And in that case, I believe it's would definitely be true that the contemplation about that the persons are born according to their karma and experience the results of their karma can be a way to come to equanimity. If you're still angry with somebody, however, I would recommend that you take care of it, if possible, today. And remember that the Buddha does not recommend anger. He recommends that anger should be cut off, completely abandoned, and done away with. And try, whether the person is alive or whether they're dead, if we're still alive, while we are alive, we've got a chance to relinquish, let go, and abandon any kind of grudge, anger, or resentment that we might have. And that will be to our advantage now and to our advantage later on. I didn't take the time to do a deep study of this sutta, but I believe that the metaphors that are in the reading that I gave are all metaphors that are drawn from other teachings throughout the suttas. So the phrase about the serpent shedding its old skin is in the Araga Sutta of the Sutta Nipata, which is a very deep and profound teaching. The part about the child who comes into the world without invitation and departs without permission, that's a verse in the Dhammapada. And the simile of a child asking for the moon is also one of the stories that is illustrating a verse of the Dhammapada. So these are actually, I think they can be useful to think of to reflect on these metaphors and to allow them to sort of sink in and to be reflected upon both, like at the discursive kind of thinking, and also at the more like a intuitive level or a heart level, to think about how death is irreversible, like a shattered pot that cannot be fixed, and that's in a way that what a relief it is, actually, that the past can be really gone. I think I'd like to stop talking and invite comments from anybody about how this contemplation that I suggest seems to work for you, if you think it would be a useful practice, and especially your idea about, or your experience or questions about the role of developing equanimity towards death. Anybody who has something to say can put your hands in, Anjali, and unmute yourself. Okay, Damon.
Thank you. I will kick it off, but I hope other people have something to say. Since you mentioned the crises, the current crises, in fact, in the world, the wars, the starvation, etc. And since one time you recommended to me that there were two people that you trusted. One was Analio, and the other one was Bhikkhu Bodhi when it came to, I don't know, maybe just Buddhist facts and so forth. So I was told today that Bhikkhu Bodhi organized a petition in the form of a letter to our president, asking for a ceasefire in the Middle East, and that 1,500 people have signed this, or 1,500 Buddhists perhaps have signed this petition. And I was also told earlier that in the evening that there are actual examples where Buddha himself intervened or sought to intervene in war. In one example, the Buddha was said to have sat down in the middle of the road in front of an advancing army or something. I don't know if this is true. But in any case, that's my comment. I signed a petition. I don't think any of this is in conflict with any of the things that you've said tonight, but I would like to hear what you think about Bhikkhu Bodhi passing around this petition demanding a ceasefire in a war.
Yes, so there are some bhikkhus who never speak about current affairs, some monastics who never speak about current affairs. Bhikkhu Bodhi does speak about current affairs. He speaks about climate change, and he also established a foundation which is addressing world hunger, and encourages Buddhists to, they have an annual, like a walk to feed the hungry. You're supposed to encourage your friends to donate to that foundation, and then you agree to walk on the walk to, it's like a walkathon or something like that. There's in the Samanyapala Sutta, which is the fruits of recluseship. It's one of the places where there's a longer explanation of sila that gives positive examples of a good morality instead of just abstaining from doing wrong things. And in that sutta, it says that a person would not kill, and they would also speak up on behalf of not killing. They would recommend not killing. They would not steal, and they would recommend not stealing. They would not do divisive speech, and they would make speech which is harmonious and is encouraging reconciliation between people who are divided. So in that sutta, I think if we keep our political acts very clearly centered on the fundamentals of Sila and the Buddha's teaching. And then other people can, talk about whether they think a ceasefire is a good strategy or not, or something like that, or whether, like it's not the right time, or, this, they can all, be concerned about the politics about it. But as a Buddhist, I think that, of course, if a ceasefire were shared by both sides of both parties to a conflict, were both undertaking a ceasefire, then it would be really great. And if one of the parties in a conflict decided to take a unilateral ceasefire and to say, even if they're overrun by the other party, that it's better to not participate in killing. This was done at one time. I think I heard that one of the Buddhist countries, when the colonial invasions came, when the foreigners were taking over their country, they didn't fight it because they didn't believe in fighting. And they just became a colony for a while. And so, that's a choice, and it's a very noble choice if you can. That's kind of more difficult to ask for, but peace is good, reconciliation is good, and we recommend it. Also, teachers are very advised not to be involved in useless conversation about politics. So you got to be able to make that distinction.
Right. Thank you.
Other comments? Let's not get swept up in politics. Any other comments about developing equanimity regarding this death contemplation? Richard.
Thank you. I wanted to address one thing that you mentioned about there's a sutta where I think you gave the example of, if you have harsh speech or something like that, you'll have a bad voice or something like that. But unfortunately, I cannot remember what sutta it is. But there's a sutta where Buddha describes that everything we experience in our life is not karma or kama. Okay. And he says there are other factors. Maybe someone here might remember what sutta that is, but he says, like, I think weather or something, just, the weather is a fact. There's these different, I think there's 5 other things besides your own kama, and kama meaning, as he said, I mean, chaitana, chaitana is what I call kama, volition, one's own volition cause you to do certain things, like when it says you're an heir of your kama and you take birth again, that's your volition. You decide to go in and take birth somewhere. And due to your avijja, you don't make good decisions, right? So you go in somewhere, right? Because you can imagine there are people taking birth in some of these countries like Syria was and other things. They're constantly at war and everything. And yet somehow their mind is saying, yeah, that's the place for me, And, they're coming out in the middle of a sheer hell. And the Palestinian conflict started a little more recently, but the Syrian thing went on for quite a while. And yet they were still, having children and everything. So, but if anyone remembers what those, the other 4 factors are, I believe weather was one, like earthquakes or something, like you were mentioning the example of the tsunami, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's not really, that's just the nature of this world that we're in, and sometimes
Right.
you're in the wrong place. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
The teaching about the niyamas is actually, I think it's either commentarial or abhidhamma, and not in the suttas. I read about it recently in Yanatiloka's Buddhist Dictionary. And so then there's the niyama of seeds, that the plant is the same as, a plant produces a seed that produces the same species. There's the niyama of the weather. And then there's the niyama of karma. The beings experience the results of their cetana, of their actions. And then there's the dhamma niyama, which is the universal characteristics that all conditioned things are impermanent, all conditioned things are unsatisfactory, and all dhammas are without self. So those are the 4 niyamas. And right, so some things happen just because of impermanence. Just that's because impermanence is universal law. So that's a causation force. The sutta about the different results of different bad deeds that people do with different kind of rebirth is definitely in the Digha Nikaya. I just don't bring up the name of it at the moment. Sheila.
Good evening, Ayya. Thank you. What comes to mind with the contemplation on equanimity and death is I thought of my 2 deceased grandmothers, and I remembered and recollected at the time of each of their deaths, one, probably 30 years ago or more, and the other maybe in 2016, I believe, or 2017. And what I noticed with both of their deaths was that there was an acceptance that I felt, and I don't know if it's because I felt like they had lived really long and good lives. They were both beautiful human beings, and but there was a calmness, and for a period I shouldn't say second thoughts, but culturally there with some people an expectation of grief and more demonstrative emotions around their death. And a few years ago, a very close friend of the family died, and I went to the funeral, and there was a clarity that I felt, and it was different than um, the a deeper emotive response that, now that I'm thinking about it, is possibly taking us away from, or can take us away from, the condition or just the actuality of that death. So almost being present with the death of that person versus and I'm not trying to speak for other people, but being kind of swayed by the emotion and not um and I don't know how to finish it off, I'm sorry, but I think an acceptance, I guess, and of the death without, but at the same time, it in some circles a conflict because of not showing that evident grief or sorrow.
Sheila, I think it's because you are very considerate. You don't want to criticize anybody for responding in one way or in another way to the death of their loved ones. It could be that if a person is reacting, with a lot of demonstrable weeping and wailing and depression and even being almost like mentally deranged because of a loss, that can be because they're attached to that person. And it's because of that attachment, or even that they have some identification about their relationship with that person. We had the example a few days ago. We were reading a sutta where Ananda was responding to the death of Sariputta and saying that he felt mentally deranged and his mind was unclear and he couldn't remember things. His memory was affected, and so that in a way Ananda is representing the kind of like the everyman. He's the person who's showing the natural emotional response of ordinary people, and he's sort of got that place in some of the sutta stories of showing somebody who's not yet gone beyond the ordinary typical human reactions. I don't blame anybody for experiencing grief. There's no use in that. But we don't want to with wisdom, if we experience grief, we may know that it's our own clinging, our own attachment, or our own identification with this relationship that's causing the grief that we experience, and not so much something about the other person. Well, I suppose if the other person is morally corrupted and destined for hell, and we love them and we see that they're bound for hell, we could feel sad because of like empathy and empathy for their suffering. But when we can work with that, whatever attachment or identification that we've realized in relation to that person, and be able to purify that and to release that, let go of that attachment, and then come to peace. That's a way of making use of the sorrowful experience of being bereaved in order to make a tremendous progress in the Dhamma and to discover profound a depth of wisdom about the nature of dukkha, that if we never experienced a loss like that, we may not really have anything but a very shallow idea of what dukkha really is. But when we experience that loss and we kind of like go through the process of it, and then having had to experience some losses, it may be that then one gains a more like a capacity to be not destabilized anymore from the deaths of and the subsequent losses that we experience, because we've grown and we've come to be mature in wisdom. But if we meet somebody who is distraught, who is suffering, who's very sad, if we experience that at any time in our life in the past, then we can, like say with sincerity and complete honesty, yes, I understand how that feels for you, and I can promise you that this suffering you have is temporary. And it's almost a sure thing that in the future, when you remember your dear relative who's passed away, instead of tears coming to your eyes, it will be a joyful smile and laughter as you remember the beautiful qualities of that person, because the grief is temporary, but it's definitely an opportunity to gain a better depth of wisdom to process that. I think we've managed to use our time in a very nice way. I appreciate the comments. Is there any person who wanted to say something, but they forgot to raise their hand? Okay. Maureen, you have something?
I was thinking back when I've been most distressed at funerals, and they were at funerals where the death was unexpected, or it seemed like a tragedy. And the people themselves were very good people. And I think, you know, I came to terms with it. But it was you each one. These were three younger people at work when I was working full time, and we were like a family in the operating rooms, you know. And so these were young people. One was killed in a horrible car accident by an impatient driver as she was turning into a driveway going home. The other one, he'd had some cancer that he had treatments when he was in his teenage years, but then he went on in his like 40s or 50s to die of a sequelae to those treatments, another different kind of cancer. And then there was another young woman who died of a cancer when she was in her 30s. And it was the loss of, they were a member of our society, of our family. And it took us all a bit of time to sort of come to terms with those losses. But they were the sorts of deaths that were we talked about it the other week, unexpected and out of the blue. But I think it's a process of coming to terms with the loss of that person and really appreciating how good they had been for our community in the OR. Their integrity and their the way they were a pleasure to work with. You know, they were good people, and then they were not there. And it took time, but it meant that we really, I don't think anybody forgot them, but it was just, we lost as a community, you know, so I have a different, you know, I have a different view about things, about rebirth and that kind of thing. It's what you do in your life that's important. And we appreciated those lives. Yeah, and it took time to sort of get used to that they wouldn't be there anymore with us. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for sharing that. Of course, you make me remember that the dukkha of separation, being separated from what is dear, is painful. And that's it. It's painful to lose what's dear and delightful. And it's because of the beautiful qualities of those persons and how much you appreciated them, and also not having the preparation, the surprise factor that makes those kind of deaths to be shocking loss. In my observation and what I've read, it's compounded even more so when it's your own child who passes away in the prime of life, when you're old and they're young, and it's, you know, not the right order of things. That can be the most one of the most traumatic kinds of losses, and that takes a long time to heal and recover from. But that nevertheless, it's for you and for each one who was touched by those deaths, those who are living, who still have got their work to do to integrate and to process and to emerge from their sorrow, and to then, you know, come back to balanced state where they can continue to, as you say, to do good in this life. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. It's like facing the dukkha. You don't want to sweep it under the carpet. You look at what's happened and really try and face it as a real event, not something that you can just gloss over. And I think that takes time. Yeah. But you can arrive at that period of place of equanimity, with the gratitude for their lives and that kind of thing to think back on. Yeah.
Thank you. Damon, I'll give you the last comment.
No, I just want to know if we're going to continue our studies on death. The month is half over. I'm very interested. I would like to know what the plan is for the second half of the month in terms of our death studies.
Well, it's not a sure thing. I am supposed to have recruit the Bhikkhuni Suvijana and possibly another experienced and capable bhikkhuni to be guest speakers. So if I'm successful, then over the next couple of weeks we may have some guest speakers joining us for some of the teachings. On Thanksgiving weekend, we will be especially remembering and like gratitude, meditating on gratitude to those who have gone before us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's pay respects to the Triple Gem. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you.
I remember the Buddha, though, they sent a woman who had lost her baby had died, and told her to find one household.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, and that was her way of coming to terms.
Understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.